I've been closely attached to the gaming world and playing games for nearly all of the 31 years I've been alive. Maybe a little too closely attached for some of those years. 26 years in, I hit a point where I thought I had seen it all, experienced it all, and I stopped. Unimaginable to the 10-year-old me, I actually just stopped playing video games altogether. Every game felt exactly the same. After all, it's pretty rare to see something completely new, something that's never been done before. Typically, most games are just a creative spin on an idea of the past, and the idea of the infinite dungeon is no different. In fact, the endless dungeon concept has been around longer than I've been alive. Something that is different, however, is actually getting the opportunity to talk to the people who create the games I play. We all have a voice these days. When I was a kid, I couldn't even comprehend that the games I loved were being created by actual people. It didn't help that the only designer I knew of was Shigeru Miyamoto, who is more of a whimsical and mythical creature than man in my eyes. The closest interaction I had with him was reading my brother's subscription of Nintendo Power on the toilet. But these days, we have the internet. Oh, and not just any internet. The kind of internet that has a forum for each game, a plethora of social media sites, and of course, YouTube. We can all share our thoughts and ideas about the games we love, including with the developers. The only problem is it's not always obvious that our voices are heard. They see and hear a lot more than we think, but there are 1,000 of us for every one of them. Still, though, it's a night and day difference between gaming now versus when I was a kid, something that is often taken for granted, I think. One step beyond this, though, is actually getting an opportunity to speak with the developers face to face. Not counting a brief moment of disco fever in 2017, I've been lucky enough to talk to Kabam face to face on 4 separate occasions, which is approximately 4 more times than I can say about any other game company. 1 at Comic-Con 2016, 2 at the Kabam hosted Community Party of 2016, 3 Comic-Con 2017, and 4 most recently, Adora and Mike came to the Seattle Community Meetup. Nice little surprise. At the end of the night, they asked me what I thought about dungeons. They said, go ahead. Tell us. Be honest and don't hold anything back. Tell us what you really think. Seems like I found myself in yet another situation unimaginable to the 10-year-old me who was too busy crapping his pants in one of the ghost house levels of Super Mario World. Come on. I couldn't have been the only one. Everything about those levels was creepy. The music, the way the boos flew at you when you turned your back to them, even those blue ghostly doors that appeared after hitting a P-switch freaked me out somehow. But anyway, I spend several hours a day thinking about this game, and here I have the chance to talk to Kabam about their newest game mode, and they want me to tell them everything I've got, the truth, no holding back. So here we go. I tell them, get this, I tell them, I like dungeons. But then I said, it's really good. Man, come on, what the hell, that's it? That's all I got? Surely there has to be more in my brain. I always have some kind of deeper thoughts about every aspect of this game, especially something as big as dungeons. Now, to be fair, I was pretty exhausted. I never planned a party before, period, let alone a community meetup for a mobile game, and all I wanted was for it to go smoothly and for people to have a good time. Plus, at the time, Dungeons had only been out for a few days, so I hadn't really given them too much thought yet. Finally, I did say 2 other things at least. 1. Dungeons take far too long to complete. This was, of course, before Kabam made any adjustments to it. Feels much better these days. Not perfect, but, definitely better. And 2, I want Dungeons to stay forever. I actually asked Kabam to take away some other game mode instead. To which Adora said something along the lines of, yeah, that's not going to happen. Which is fine, I said it in kind of a joking manner anyway. I never expected them to be like, oh, sure, Alliance Quest or Alliance War. Which one would you like us to get rid of? Guy who sits at home all day hosting mildly inappropriate live streams that rarely include the wearing of pants? And that was pretty much the end of our conversation about dungeons. But the next day I couldn't help thinking about it. Yeah, removing some other part of the game is silly, but so is removing the one game mode where we can actually play with friends outside of the Alliance. But if dungeons stay, and nothing goes, then we have an overwhelming amount of content to keep up with. There's already 4 core game modes available as it is, Solo questing, Alliance Quest, Alliance War, and the Arena. And if you add in dungeons, that's 4 plus 1, which equals 5 core game modes. So how could it be possible to add a new game mode without overwhelming people? Is there some other solution to this problem? Well, what if 4 plus 1 equals 4? Solo questing, Alliance Quest, Alliance War, Arena, and Dungeons. But Arena and Dungeons together in their own category, not a fifth category for Dungeons. Instead of Dungeons giving points towards its own separate milestones and rewards, imagine if Dungeons gave Arena points. What would that look like? Well, you would have an option to grind for milestones and champions solo in the Arena, together with a friend in Dungeons, or a combination of the two over the 3-day span that the Arena lasts for. Every game mode is optional, but because each mode has its own rewards, we feel compelled to try to do them all, which leads to players feeling overwhelmed, getting burned out, and then throwing around that word retired. With arenas and dungeons contributing towards the same rewards, players get optional content without piling on yet another task for your ever-growing daily to-do list. Have a friend online you want to grind with? Cool, hit the dungeons together. Just want some mindless grinding while watching a movie? Cool, play the Arena. Either way, you're earning battle chips, gold, units, shards, and champions. Think about how many issues this would fix, not just with dungeons, but the game as a whole. Skilled veterans would no longer be required to do the same monotonous fights they've done 1,000 times in order to grind for Alliance Quest donations or a basic champion, while at the same time leaving that as an option for those who enjoy Arena or are still developing their own skills. People would have an alternative method of obtaining gold. People would have an alternative method of obtaining units. Dungeon rewards would no longer be on a daily timer, and I think this would be a better alternative to the commonly suggested week-long timer, because much like every school project I've ever had, I think many of us would just procrastinate until the end of the week, realize how far behind we are, and then say screw it and skip dungeons altogether. Infinite dungeons would actually feel infinite, instead of the way it works now, where you push to room 4 and exit out even if you have healthy champions because there's no reason to keep pushing. If you kept getting points that actually mattered, people would push. It would also solve the issue of arena grinders feeling bad about interrupting their grind just to play dungeons, wherein that should be something people should feel good about. People would be excited to rank up champions that do well in dungeons. Unlike Alliance Quest or War, you want more than just a few champions ranked up, giving players a purpose to keep playing even after collecting the current best champions in the game. Veterans could actually help new players grind for champions in a legitimate way. Imagine that, actually being able to play with and help your friends progress without just being like, yeah dude, the game is a massive grind, check out some videos and get to work. Maybe by this time next year, we could play together if you're dedicated enough, but probably not. But wait, aren't there 5 different arenas? How would the game know which arena you want points in? Easy, it would be determined by the dungeon difficulty you select, and just like today, you can't use 5-star champions in low-level dungeons. So this would actually give another reason to be a little bit more excited about getting a new 3-star champion, where you can take them into a dungeon, have a little fun, learn a thing or two in an environment that doesn't cost energy, and be rewarded for it. Points would be balanced in such a way that regardless of which game mode, dungeons or arena, both types of players would gain a similar amount of points per time spent. It doesn't have to stop there either. Dungeons could be fully integrated into the game with a 22-hour solo event and 3-day alliance event. I would suggest changing Perfect Series to Dungeon Combat since there are currently 2 alliance events for Arena as it is. That, or just employ the same idea to the solo and 3-day events where you can get points from either Dungeons or Arena. And lastly, to entertain the competitive side of the player base, have a weekly ranked reward system exclusive to Dungeons. Only your single furthest dungeon would count towards the rankings. The more casual players could just do one room of one dungeon per week just to qualify for some kind of ranked rewards. It'd be something easy for everyone to do, one more thing for players to look forward to each week, kind of like an interactive cross between the login calendar and summoner advancement. Meanwhile, the hardcore players could push for top rewards and bragging rights. The rewards don't have to be anything too insane, since all of the points they're getting for trying to get on the leaderboards are still contributing towards the arena system and getting rewards there. Just, a little something extra for the effort. There could be a new Warbound-esque title system added, or even a legend tag available for skill rather than just speed, something that's available to Android users even. Whether or not a weekly leaderboard is added, I think the way points are calculated in dungeons needs to be changed in two ways. Number one, points should not be lost if you fail to clear a room, and two, points should be given even if you can't fully clear a room, the same way you get points in Alliance Quest for taking down each enemy, or even for partial takedowns. Usually I'm all for having to make tough, interesting decisions in this game, like having to decide whether to stop and claim your full points or push on and risk failure with real consequences of losing half of those points, but I don't think it works very well in this particular game mode. It limits players to just farming the same easy, low difficulty content rather than trying to push onward to face new challenges. The current system is just too punishing. In a more traditional dungeon crawling RPG, I think the decision to push onwards or back out makes more sense. In those games you have a deeper connection to the characters you're controlling, and death should have a bigger impact. Plus, in those kinds of games, you're typically exploring to find some ancient lost treasure that no one before you has been brave enough or strong enough to get. In RPGs like that, every little extra that you can explore is a big deal and has a chance for big payoff. However, in Marvel Contest of Champions, it's just another set of champions and some extra points. We're still testing our limits, but it feels more like a virtual training grounds, using our champions to go for a high score, versus exploring the deep, dark depths of the unknown for ancient treasure. Every room is set up in a similar way, just with slightly higher stats and random nodes. It's not a bad thing, just two very different feelings for two very different types of games. And in this type of infinite dungeon system, I would prefer if we were encouraged to always push until our champions were knocked out, getting points for every percentage further into a room we can get, and not losing points for inevitably getting knocked out. I also think the matchmaking system would be a lot less frustrating if we didn't lose points. That's about it for the major changes I would like to see to dungeons, and I do have a list of minor changes I would like to see too, but first I do want to reiterate that I really do enjoy dungeons in their current state. I love the small group size, I love the no-frills, easy-to-navigate map, I love that it's only 2 class types per day, I appreciate the fact that a lot of the nodes are new and some of them are actually really fun, like Duel, and the quick chat system is actually super useful even when I'm on Skype with friends. But here's a little list of tweaks I would like to see even if dungeons aren't made permanent. First off, I'd really like to see a change to the way the points are calculated, like I mentioned previously, including not losing points for failing. Second, we need a faster way to quit out of the dungeons after failing. Third, the return to lobby button should regroup the 2 players if both players select it. Fourth, the cooldowns for each champion could be done a little bit better. Cooldowns should exist to keep us excited to level up champs for a reason other than Alliance Quest and Alliance War, but the cooldowns could be a tiny bit shorter. For example, I like that 4-star champions basically refresh every single day, but if you play late at night one day, they will still be on cooldown mid-afternoon the next day. This prevents me from playing with friends who are only available at certain times of the day. I'm kind of locked into playing with the same group of people each day instead. What I would prefer to see is champions reset at a certain time of each day, or just lower the cooldown by a few hours. Fifth and finally, I would like to see more bonus events like Dungeon Day. We don't need them all the time, but I can see some cool possibilities like adding a global life transfer node for a weekend or something like that. Alright, I could say a lot more, but at this point I feel like I've been rambling about dungeons long enough for one video. To sum things up, I think the current state of dungeons is fun, but it doesn't quite fit as seamlessly into the MCOC universe as well as it could. Right now, it can feel like a daily chore I need to get done before I can play the rest of the game, whereas I would prefer it to feel like a fun, challenging, group-based alternative method of getting the same rewards that are available in the arenas. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching.